Hello, Andrew here from M&A Softworks. Today we will be doing our second devlog. As you can see here, we are working on the moon. So we've just created the sphere, and we're setting up the texture and the material and getting ourselves prepped for mapping. Go ahead and open up our texture editing software, GIMP, and get drawing. So I've never been a particularly great artist when it comes to creating textures, which is why this looks a little weird, but I'm happy with how it turned out. There were some problems implementing the moon, which is what this video in the background covers, is the whole process from start to finish of getting the moon in there. There were some bumps along the way, some things I had to learn. So we've got here on the moon surface is we're creating a sea right now. So you have your craters, and then another thing is on the moon there are depressed areas, deeper areas that are darker, and we call those seas, and then it's creating a impact there that has lines from it, from impact ejecta, I believe it's from. There's one like that on the actual moon. So that was kind of mildly inspired by that. So now we get to texturing. Now, one big problem here is even though these planets are vastly higher detail in their surface than the previous ones, they're still pretty low detail. So you'll notice that when you play, or if you watch these videos, you'll notice that whenever there's areas that are that have topography, hills and valleys and craters and whatnot, or wherever it's at, you'll notice there are a lot of areas that have this. The topography is low detail. It's very easy to see the edges of each kind of plate that makes up the model, each quad, I guess you would call it. Now, again, this is all I will make this, higher detail in the future. Right now, though, this is vastly more detail than we've had before, and I do want to take it in steps as I increase detail, because I don't want to suddenly try to create something that the computer isn't capable of running. Now, I'm pretty sure that most computers will be able to run what I've got here, because my and there you can see me kind of make everything lower. Now I'm lining up the C's, but my computer, it's very low specs. It's pretty old, very old actually, in as far as the computer is concerned. It's almost as old as me. We'll just put it that way. It can run fairly well most stuff that I want. But the point I'm getting at is it's very low end. So I'm pretty sure most things will be, if it can run on this, most platforms will be able to run it. I mean, you'd have to have a really low end PC in order to not be able to run this. So that does, obviously optimization is something I want to focus on, but it probably won't be super high detail as long as I'm working on, or super high priority rather, as long as I'm working on this, because it's just kind of already there. I messed up with my selection. Yes, since the last devlog, I have learned several ways to select multiple faces at once, and you can see I use them all here. Anyway, optimization will always be something I want to strive for, but it probably won't be super high on my priorities while I'm working on this computer, because if I can get it to run on this computer, which of course that's not optimization, that's just kind of getting it to work. If it can run on this computer, I'm pretty sure it's going to be able to run on most computers. Is here. The big thing is I wasn't sure if I wanted the craters to just be depressed areas, or if I wanted them to actually be like a crater where they get deeper and deeper, but also like the size of the crater gets smaller and smaller the further down you go. So like if you imagine it as a flat 2D plane, the crater would get smaller. The edges of the crater would get smaller as you go down, but it's still deeper. So it was a question of whether or not I wanted it to go down a little bit and then be flat, or go down all the way. I eventually decided on going down all the way for the craters. Another thing is those lines on the bottom where the impact ejecta were, those kind of ended up being a lot deeper than I intended for them to be. Again, most of this is still kind of placeholder. The way the planets and the way the planet and the moon look is probably gonna it's almost certainly gonna change in the future. Here you can see I've got most of the craters modeled, but the way the planet's going to change here in the future, the planet and the moon are going to change here in the future. Their topography and the way they appear are probably going to change a lot as well, until I'm happy with it, because the ultimate goal with this whole thing is to have it be, have it be able to run, simulate basically everything. I say it's a God game on the download page, and what I mean by that is you can do anything in it. But it doesn't really fall neatly into any category, because the idea behind this whole game is that you can do just about anything you want, from creating a whole galaxy and just seeing how it all runs, to playing as a single person surviving all alone on an empty planet, or anything in between. You can set it up to play as a first-person shooter, you can set it up to play however you want. It's basically a platform where you can create your own stuff. Everything in it is created on your own. There you can see I'm just seeing how the whole thing looks in-game, with everything running and how the game performs. But yeah, I wanted this to be very... I want it to be very... to run... to be able to like model everything, make anything you want in it. That's the whole idea behind it, is I could create an entire universe, from the way the laws of physics work all the way up to the galaxies and planets, if there are those, or whatever I can come up with, and do anything with it, from overseeing it like a god to playing as a member of some species on some planet, whether that be sentient or not, or guiding a whole species through their whole process from when they first come into existence to when they cease to exist. It's really whatever you want. That's the overall idea of it. And as you can see, there's a lot, as you can imagine, there's going to be a lot that goes into that. So the big thing we want to start, though, is we're going through and we're modeling the basic physics of the universe. What the physics of the universe are like. So all that you see it's all gravity. This is all to simulate, gravity, and to get gravity working. The addition of the planets and moon and whatnot, they're all there just so you can do something while playing with gravity. And it also is to help lay the groundwork, help get me back into game design, and that kind of stuff. As I, get more experience working with all this stuff, I can get everything running the way I want. That's not to say that what you see here is going to be completely gone. I mean, it will go away in some aspects, but it will also stay in others. But the ultimate goal here is to have like the whole universe modeled in every aspect, every physical law, and I'll know I'll have done my job when the various parts of physics they're only modeled in the same way the laws are. And what I mean by that is, for instance, in real life, there's no scientific law that says that an orbit exists. There's just gravity that says that, objects with mass will pull to each other together with a very specific force, which is, is calculated based off the gravitational constant, the universe, and their mass and their distance. That's the strength that they're pulled together by. And then there's the various laws of motion that have to deal with all that works. But orbits arise, and here you can see I'm trying to find some. I'm trying to set up the collision box, and we'll cover that in a second. But what when you go fast enough to the side, you just miss the planet as you fall. That's what an orbit is. There's no scientific law that says an orbit is an orbit, and that's how it works in the game. I don't code in orbits, I code in gravity, and orbits emerge as a result of that, and that's how I want all the physical laws to be. I'm not going to code in atoms. I'm going to code in the strong force and the electromagnetic force, and that will result in atoms. That's the way I want to make it. That's the way the universe is, and I want it to as closely model that as possible. Anyway, so the problem here that you see in the back is you have your mesh collider, which is perfectly shaped to the way you want. The problem with it here is I can't have a mesh collider and a rigid body, and the rigid body is needed for applying forces like movement. So basically, to explain what that means is I can't have the craters and the mountains on the moon have their collision boxes while also having the moon orbit the planet, if that makes sense. So what I have to do is I just have to use a plain sphere collider. Now I will fix this in the future. This is something I'm going to continue to look on. This is just to get it working for now. But basically, right now, it might look like, if you approach the moon, it might look like there's mountains and valleys and stuff, and you might want to judge your altitude based off that, but you shouldn't. You should pay very close attention to your altimeter, because your altimeter is going to tell you your actual altitude. The altimeter will tell you your distance from the collision box, and that's the important thing to realize. Because if you don't follow your altimeter, you will crash. And here, you can see, very similar glitch to what was happening earlier on in development is the gravity is too strong, so the moon will get sucked towards the planet, and it won't end up in an orbit. So you can see the old moon just rolling around in all of its old, outdated glory. I'm flying around here. I'm trying to catch up to the big moon. So there you can see it. Now I would like to point out this is physically impossible in real life. So of course, if this were to happen in the game, which it will be possible to happen in the final game if I get my way with everything, that moon would literally just crumble into pieces. It would get ripped apart as soon as it got close enough to the planet, and it would either end up as a whole bunch of asteroids in a ring around the planet, or would crash into the planet. Maybe both. Some of it would get ejected out. But here you can see I'm trying to land, and I do to some degree. That's about as good as you're going to get in landing in this game right now. That will all be fixed later, but here you can see I'm doing more stuff. So I do want to do some optimization here before this update comes out, because you might be able to tell from the video things lag up quite a bit. There's a lot of lag, especially when moving with dealing with the planets and moons. And also you can tell from the way I have to do the camera movements. Unity does not like dealing with things on that distance away. And here we're about to come to our second big problem. So right now I'm setting up the orbit for the moon, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a map view ring, so that way you can see the path the moon is going to take, and it has some bugs I need to fix on it as well. But one big thing that happens here is you'll see it here in a few minutes, is the camera won't render in the planets, and I'm trying to think what's wrong with it, because I know the far clipping plane, which is how far away things can get before the camera just stops loading them. I know that's far enough out that it should be loading everything. Why isn't it loading the planets? And I still have no idea why. And if you're watching this and you know why, I would love to hear why, because I would like to get the skybox working again. But it turned out it was something to do with the skybox. Long story short, I have to keep the skybox off in the map view. So when you're in the map view, you'll notice all the stars disappear and the screen goes black. Whether or not that will be there in the final 0.2 update, I don't know. I would like to not have it there, but it might end up staying there just as a requirement to get the map view to work. But I do have it working now. I don't know why, but it wouldn't load the planet when I have the skybox open. And here you can see I'm setting up the ring for the moon's orbit. So the moon will follow this fairly closely. And this is the part where you can see the camera preview. You've got the ring, but there's no planet or moon. And it's definitely far enough away that those should be in there. And I do a number of things, from trying to change render settings, the way things are loaded, textures, materials, the field of view, the distance, the far clipping plane. I set the far clipping plane to a absurd distance, and I actually got it to load in the planet. The problem was when you'd set it to such a far distance, it would literally it just would stop loading the skybox, which was weird. So it was either I had the skybox working with or I had the skybox off, and I had all the planet and moon and everything, and everything was kind of nice and well balanced, or I had but I don't have the skybox, or I had the skybox on, but it wouldn't load, and the field of view was set to an absurd distance, which I don't know how that's going to affect performance. Or I have some weird middle ground where everything's glitched out, or finally, and obviously the least preferred option, the planet and moon aren't loaded on the map view. So here you can see I'm looking through all the documentation. Oh, wow, I'm tired. For Unity, trying to find how everything's going. How to do all this, and I go over to the quality settings. That doesn't work. I do get a chance to mess with some of the shadows though, because you might have noticed it earlier on in the testing as the shadows were glitchy. I'm not quite sure why they're glitchy. That's another bug I need to fix before the release, but they're definitely quite glitchy, and I obviously don't want that. So that's the thing to fix. Anyway, to continue what I was saying, right now we're working on gravity. After I add in gravity, I'm probably going to add in the electromagnetic force. Add in magnetic fields and that sort of thing. And then obviously, while I'm doing all this, I'm going to continue with the update. So I'm going to get the modular rockets so you can build your own rockets, and so you can continue to mess with gravity while I perfect the gravity system. And here you can see, this is what happens when you set the field of view to super high. I was thinking about keeping this as a glitch, because then you can see in the map view what you're at, but it would pause the view, but the game would keep running, and also there's a weird glitch with the texture, and it was being weird. Anyway, here you can see I'm going through more options, trying to get everything working. But yeah, I'm probably going to add in electromagnetic forces next to get magnetic fields and whatnot. And then I'm going to continue working on all this, but I'm going to zoom into the atomic level, and I'm going to get the strong force and the weak force working. And quarks and whatnot. I want to get them to attract to each other and be as accurate as possible. And that's going to be very hard to get it accurate, because quantum physics is notorious for not being very easy to simulate, or easy to understand for that matter. So those are both going to be fun bits about simulating that, but that's where I want it to get, so that's where I'm going to have to work towards. But yeah, so once I get all those forces in, then I can actually work on the whole creative license where you can go in and basically beef up the modular system to be for everything, so you can add in planets, galaxies, whatever you want. Anyway, here we are at the end of the video. This has been Andrew Simon with M&A Softworks. We'll see you next time.